there are certain things, or more like there's every artist have, that one stage in their drawing process that they don't like or don't enjoy as much as other parts of the process. It could be coloring, inking, line art. To me, the stage I don't enjoy so much, or more like I kind of like, I'd rather avoid it if I could, and that stage is sketching. But what I'm doing in this recording isn't sketching. What I'm doing in this video that I really enjoy is doodling. And I think there is a difference between doodling and sketching, although a doodle and a sketch can probably look a lot alike. But I think the difference is that a sketch is part of an actual finished piece of work, while a doodle is just a doodle. It doesn't really have a purpose except you do it just for your own enjoyment of drawing. And that is what I'm doing here. At first, it might look like I am doing a study, and I guess you could say I'm doing that, but I wouldn't really say it is a study. It's more like I don't want to bother come up with my own idea when I just really want to draw. So I'm just looking up a photograph of something that is within my comfort zone, because when I doodle, it is only for my own satisfaction. And another reason this is a doodle and not a sketch or a study is I am pretty much not following the very common advice that you often hear when it comes to doing studies. For example, this face, I didn't start with the big shapes. I didn't start with, the whole face shape. I started with the nose and then the eyes and the lips, I started with the juicy details that I prefer and enjoy. And well, if you know yourself enough, you will also be aware that when you focus a lot on the details, they often end up too big or too small. So I will often just adjust it as I go on, if it bothers me. And I'm working in Clip Studio Paint, and I am using a vector layer here, not a regular raster layer. I really enjoy doodling on vector layers because, as you can see, the eraser and other tools with the vector layer gives me certain abilities, or I don't know, yeah, I guess I could call it abilities, that speeds up certain parts of the process. And I will explain what I'm doing as I start doing those things that you simply can't do on a raster layer in Clip Studio Paint. Another thing that you can't see here, because I'm working on an iPad, is that I am holding pretty far out on the pen, like the fingers aren't so close to the tip of the pen. So I use more wrist and arm movements for the long strokes. And another thing is I set the stabilizer to a very high value. and it's basically making the lines much smoother. And here you can see that I am using something called connect lines. And as you can see, I go over areas where I have scribbled a lot. And if it's possible, the lines will pretty much merge together into one or a few more lines. And it sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on how you adjust the settings. But I love using it as a way to clean up the sketch. And it also creates this abstract, stylized look to the lines that I just really like. And I just really enjoy doing it. And here I am outlining the shadows around the eye, merging more lines. Every time you see that little green brush stroke, I am connecting lines, because all these strokes are vectors, hence a vector layer. And when I do these doodles, I usually pick references that have a very strong light source that makes a lot of cast shadows, because these cast shadows will work as my guidelines. And I also just prefer to pick faces that are tilted or in half profile. Very rarely do I pick, a face that is perfectly symmetrical, facing in front with, very dim light that doesn't cast much shadows or definitions. It makes it kind of like removes the structure that I can use. And here I am just removing doodles that I wasn't happy with. Like, it is totally fine to just delete stuff you're not happy with. Also, I just want to make more room in case I want to do more doodles. And I think I am satisfied with this face. So I'm going to draw another face. So I'm browsing Pinterest, and I will probably just cut off this part. And there I found another face. I haven't checked the source of these references, which is pretty unprofessional of me to do. But this whole video is very improvised and just very spontaneously made. I don't really record when I doodle that often, really. But as you can see, a lot of other artists have also drawn this photograph. And you can see why it's a very strong silhouette, very good lighting that highlights the facial features and the facial structure. And just like with the first one, I start with the nose and the eyes. And when it comes to half profiles, I really like to, well, it's a very common good rule of thumb, but to connect the bridge of the nose with one of the eyebrows, usually the one that's most far away, depending on the angle and such, because the face is all connected, the body is all connected in one way or another. And so usually when I do these, I start with the nose bridge, and the eyebrows, and then the eyes, the eye socket, then I move down to the lips and mouth. And you can see that I draw this line from the tip of the nose down to the bottom lip, and it's basically just my way of checking if they follow a negative shape or negative silhouette, which is something you'll often hear about in art school or in some art tutorial or art YouTube video. It's basically just like when it comes to just, studying photographs or drawing from photographs, there are different ways to do it, but like it's a lot about shapes, and I really love to draw shadows as shapes and not just fill them in. Bort med dig, katt! Så, bort med dig. I'm sorry, that was my cat. I'm not going to edit that out. I'll leave it in for entertainment purposes. And as you can see, when I use the eraser here, when you are drawing on a vector layer, you can use a vector eraser, and it has different types of settings. But it has one setting where if you draw a line, it removes the whole line up until that line cross another line. So if you have made like a sketch or a drawing that has a lot of crossing lines that you need to clean up, a vector eraser is super useful, assuming that the layer you drew on is a vector layer. That's a very important thing to take into account, otherwise it won't work. Otherwise it will just work like a regular digital eraser. And as you can see here, the facial features are way bigger than the rest of the head. And that is basically what I am working on. Like, I could use the transform tool, but sometimes it just doesn't, work for you. And I could just say that I just draw and it just ends up looking all right. But I know that to some of you this looks like magic, how I just know where to place what. And the reason I give that impression, I guess, is because I have practiced and studied facial proportions and human anatomy and perspective and all that jazz. Like this, I have some background knowledge and skills that that sticks around when you have practiced it to the point that you don't even need to think about it. And for example, here I know that everything is connected in some way, as I said. And in this case, I am using the nose as my reference point for the rest of the face and head, like when I'm placing down the ear, where does the ear align with the nose, and where does the lips align with the nose, and where does the eyes align with the nose, etc., etc. You could do this probably with using the eyes as the reference point, or the lips, or the ears, or any other place as a reference point. But I personally find the nose to be the most efficient one. It's everything is a matter of preference, really. Like you can use whatever technique you want. Like as long as the end result looks like what you hoped for, or looks decent, or is I mean you got what you wanted to do. Like that's fair. Like, you can probably do this type of study by drawing, 500,000 million little dots, like pointillism, I think it's called. Or you can just do this all in one stroke. And here I am connecting the lines again and just scribbling all over to see how it looks. I really like how the lips and the chin ended up there. And also I just really like how I do the nose there. Really, noses are hard, so whenever you manage to draw a good nose, let it be and don't try to improve it, because sometimes you can actually make it worse. And my cat is poking me, she wants dinner. Hon ska få mat sen, låt mig få prata klart här. Okej? Bajskatt. And yeah, so I think I'm working more on the head here. I've used the shadow along the skull as a guide here. And I'm just cleaning things up. I think the ear is a bit large, but I'm pretty sure I will adjust that in a minute or so. We'll see. And I hope the audio will turn out alright, because I'm recording this on my iPad. I'm pretty much doing like everything on the iPad, because I really don't feel like having to switch back and forth between the computer and the iPad. It's a hassle, really. There is there's something I think it's called closure. It's a type of thing the human brain is really good at doing. It's how we can, like, if you see a picture and part of it is covered, you can sort of expect what lies underneath, because you see enough information to make a guess. When I'm cleaning this up, I usually already remember or have an idea of where the line goes next, and how to close a shape, such as the shadows around the eye, for example. And it's something that I remember Scott McCloud in I think it's called Inventing Comics, the Invisible Art or something, a really good book. There he talks about closure and how we can read a comic and understand the transfer from one scene to another between panels and pages, so we don't need to see the whole time lapse from how they got from one scene to another in a movie, for example, because that would make the movie 50 hours long probably. But yeah, there's a similar type of thinking when it comes to analyzing shapes and negative space when you're doing these kinds of drawings or doodles or studies. And I'm connecting the lines here, and I didn't really like how it first turned out. You will see a lot of erasing and redrawing, erasing, and just to get that one line to look just right, or at least good enough. Things like, I'm not trying to make this drawing look exactly like the reference. if I would try to make it look exactly like the reference, I would probably not doodle it. And also if I did try, I would take a way longer time and I would be way more frustrated. To me, it's more like I try to see what aspects of the reference I want to make sure is in the drawing, or that I want to add. Like, it's not just that, like I don't want it to look like she has, you know, an underbite. I want to make sure that she is, you know, or they actually, that they are tilting their head up. And where is the eye looking? It's not really looking at the camera, and the mouth is slightly open, but it's not gritting the teeth, which is how it looks like on my drawing at this moment. So now I'm cleaning up, and I think soon you will see me, yeah, I'm just cleaning up more lines here. But you will see that the skull shape is a bit too sharp to my liking. So I think soon enough, yeah, no, actually scratch that. I'm still working on the mouth. But yeah, at this point I have established the overall head, and the face proportions doesn't look as big as they did in the beginning of this doodle. And like I could, you know, keep the eyes, nose and lips that large. Like I could just keep it as a stylistic choice if I want to. Like this is my doodle, my rules, you know. And see, yeah, I'm trying to smooth out the skull. So yeah, so I switched to something called simplify lines. And what that does is that since every line here is a vector, when you drag the simplify tool over these vectors, the amount of anchor points are decreased, which usually makes the line smoother. So I usually, if I want to, you know, manually adjust a vector line, I first run the simplify tool over it, so I don't have, you know, hundreds of little dots I have to manually drag around. There are different types of tools for the vector layer in Clip Studio that are very handy. I really recommend everyone who has this program to give the vector layers a go. They have certain limitations, like you can't, for example, you can't use the bucket fill, you can't use the lasso eraser, but you can still use, you know, layer masks, etc. But it is, I find it very, very useful especially for line art and comics, because it speeds up the cleanup process so much. You just gotta, you know, get yourself familiar with the program. And yeah, I think I'm pretty much done at this point. Yeah, I'm pretty satisfied with how these turned out. I think I will shade these or color these, and if you would like me to make a video out of that, just let me know. And thank you all for watching, and I really hope this video turns out good, because this is not planned at all. Goodbye.